Shalom, my fellow brothers and sisters out there. It's me again, Damian Powell from YeshuaSavesAll.com. Peace be to you in the name of our Father Yahweh and our Adon, our Master, the Son of Yahweh, Yeshua HaMashiach. And we're continuing on with the Ten Commandments series. This is the second commandment. You do not make for yourself any carved images or graved images. And as you can see, I have a picture here of Barbie dolls, which are very popular. And I chose this picture of them because Barbie dolls are very popular and people give them to their children. But what does scripture have to say about them and about, busts and statues and things like that? Do they qualify as graven images breaking the second commandment? So again, thank you all for joining in. Last week we talked about Passover, and just as a reminder, Passover is coming up on the 7th. It's coming up on the 7th, so I pray you all get ready to celebrate Passover, Pesach, to proclaim the death of our Messiah until he comes again. Okay, so that was the video broadcast we did last week. Now we're continuing on with the Ten Commandments. So Exodus chapter 20, verse 4 through 6, Yahweh says, "And you do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness." So we have to remember these words. You do not make, number one. And then he says likeness. All right. So you do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the Shamayim, the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am a jealous El, which is singular form for God, visiting the wickedness of the ancestors on their children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands to those who love me and guard my commands. So statues of Yeshua or angels are in the likeness of the heavens above. And number one, we don't even know what Yeshua looks like to even have a statue or a painting of that matter of him, because we don't know what he looks like. So statues or toys of men or women, which is in the likeness of any male or female, but I would get into that. Such as Barbie dolls, teddy bears, stuffed animals, statues, action figures by McFarlane Toys. And I, at one time, about 4.5, maybe 5 years ago, and maybe longer than that, I had McFarlane action figures of football players. Okay, and that's in the likeness of any man. All right, G.I. Joes, bust of presidents, those in the Hall of Fame are forbidden because they are in the likeness of a man. And the same for statues of birds, cattle, creeping things that are on the earth beneath, that are in the earth beneath, and statues of images of fish, whales, or other sea creatures that are in the waters under the earth. Okay, and I know a lot of people, you'll see in their homes statues of birds and fish and all of these other things, but that qualifies, right? So anything in the likeness of Yahweh's creation, like dolls, which represent a human being, to an animal life, that should not be found in your home, because the Hebrew word for graven image is parsel. Parsel. And Strong's number 6458, which means to hew into shape, carved, and the short definition is cut. Brown Drivers Briggs defines it as hew or to hew into shape. And when Yahweh said, you do not make a graven image, the word for make is asa, which is Strong's number 6213, meaning to make, acquire, keep, use, prepare, work, execute, fashion, bring forth, to produce, to bring about, to be made. So based off that definition of asa, Based off the definition of Asa, graven images should not even be made to begin with unless Yahweh commands it. And I will share that later on in the broadcast. But he says that you do not make Asa. So it should not even have been produced or brought forth to begin with. So they shouldn't even existed. So further guidelines and instruction about graven images, okay? Now we know that it's line upon line, precept upon precept. So Yahweh introduced it in Exodus chapter 20 for the guidelines of what a graven image is. But Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 15 through 18, he goes into greater detail explaining what a graven image or carved image is. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 15 through 18. Therefore, diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yahweh spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and make Asa for yourself a carved image in the form of any figure. I'll read that again. For yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure. Any figure. The likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. So he goes into further detail explaining what the graven images are. First of all, he says in the form of any figure, and then in the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any winged bird, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or anything that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. So that is everything that he has created, a living form. You do not make an image of the likeness of any of that. Okay. Now, this is a very detailed command by Yahweh, which matches the Hebrew word asa and pasel about making, fashioning, bringing forth, producing, to be made. Yahweh says, do not make, carve, hew into shape, fashion, or produce any figure in the likeness of any of these. Now, ask yourself, do you have any of these items in your home that are carved images, busts, statues, dolls, figurines in the likeness of a life form that Yahweh has created? Think about these things, because I know I did at one point until he told me to remove them and started studying scripture, because we all have been taught, because it's normalcy to see statues and these things in people's homes because we think that they're innocent enough. Okay, but it's not. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 23 through 24. Guard yourselves lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh, your Elohim, which he made with you. And ye shall make for yourself a carved image in any likeness. Yahweh, your Elohim, has commanded you. For Yahweh, your Elohim, is a consuming fire and a jealous ale. Romans chapter 1, verse 22 through 23. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and changed the esteem of the incorruptible Elohim into the likeness of any image of corruptible man and of birds and of four-footed beasts and of reptiles. So even Paul was talking about images. So these are those who try to corrupt the image of Elohim by making idols. Think about the Roman Church, for example, and Catholicism, okay? Jubilees chapter 11, verse 4 through 5. And they made for themselves molded images, which is a hollow form or matrix for giving a particular shape to work into a shape. And they each worship the idol, the molded image which they have made for themselves. And then, separately, in addition to, they made carved images and unclean likenesses, and evil spirits assisted them into committing transgression and uncleanness. So, making molded images and carved images is demonic, as we see from the book of Jubilees, because we see that the demons assisted them in making these abominations. okay? Because they knew that they would transgress by doing this. Yahweh said, do not make them at all. Therefore, they wouldn't even have had the chance to think about worshiping these idols or these carved images or these molden images because they never should have existed in the first place. So we know that the demons are the exact opposite of what Yahweh is. And they are in direct rebellion to Yahweh because they serve Satan, and which is why they got cast out of heaven. So they want believers in the world to, of course, rebel. The same way that the world rejects the Sabbath day for the first day of the week, Sunday, is because Satan wants you to transgress. Okay? Now, the common justification is that I've heard from people as well. I don't bow down to them. Like I don't bow down to them. So it's okay for me to have them in my home. Now, like I said, the same way that people make justifications about breaking the Sabbath, about breaking the dietary laws, and for sin, saying that the commandments only belong to the Jews, is the same way that people would justify having carved images in their home. Yahweh clearly said, do not make them in the form of any likeness of any figure, yet those who admire the images so much make these statements like, well, I don't bow down to them. Man is the one that defines worship as bowing down to something. That's man's definition, because we all know that you can commit spiritual idolatry against Yahweh by not being faithful to him, by putting something before him, as I said on the first commandment. Your time, if you're spending 24 hours watching football and 30 minutes reading your scriptures, then that's 23.5 hours that you committed to something else other than Yahweh. That's spiritual idolatry. Okay, just like you don't have to bow down before money, but people worship it. Yeshua said you can't serve Yahweh and money, right? So people are not bowing down to money, but they can still put that before Yahweh. You see what I'm saying? They don't have to put a stack of money on an altar and bow down and worship it. No, they worship and trust in their money the same way that people, they were trusting in their idols. But even just having it in your home is a whole other thing. It's still the same thing. Yahweh's definition is not dependent on what man does or does not do with the object. So his definition is not dependent on what you do with it, or whether you bow down to it or not, or does not do with the object. He makes no distinction between an object that is worshiped and one that is not worshiped, because they are simply graven images in his sight, in the likeness of any living being, and from making or acquiring one, like buying one. The majority of the world agrees that statues in the Catholic churches are wrong. And I've heard many people say it because it's true. They are graven images. Okay, so the majority of the world agrees that the statues in the Catholic Church are wrong and that they are graven images. So what is the difference of having them being in their churches and believers having them in their homes? Additionally, like I said before, if these graven images were never created as Yahweh commanded, then the Catholic faith would never have had the opportunity to worship the image of Mary to begin with, right? Think about that. Yahweh showed no form in the bush when he consumed the fire, when he revealed himself to Moses, or on the mountain, because he knew that man would immediately create an image of him and worship it. You see what I'm saying? So they decided to go ahead and settle for a golden calf instead. They had to create an image. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 25. They carved images of their mighty ones. You are to burn with fire. So he says the images you are to burn with fire. Do not covet the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it for yourselves, lest you be snared by it. For it is an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. And do not bring an abomination into your house, lest you be accursed like it. Utterly loathe it and utterly hate it, for it is accursed. And we know what happens when you bring an accursed object into your home. When you look at what Achan did in the book of Joshua. Joshua chapter 7, verse 11 through 12. Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I have commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen. They have lied. They have put them with their own possessions. This is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They have turned their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. Verse 24. Then Joshua, Yehoshua, and all Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and his sons. And Joshua said, Why have you troubled us? Why have you troubled us? Yahweh troubles you today. Then all Israel stoned him with stones. So the point is, when you disobey the word of Yahweh and take an item and place it among your possessions like Achan did, then it makes it harder for you to stand against your enemies, amongst other things. And Yahweh said that he was not with them until they removed the accursed items. And I draw the same comparison with the carved images. He says, do not make. The people are putting that thing that he abominates into their homes. He further explains in Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 15, cursed is the man who makes a carved or molded image, an abomination to Yahweh. So first of all, again, he's saying do not make asah, to bring forth, to fashion, to bring about. So cursed is the man who even makes a carved image or a molded image, an abomination to Yahweh. The work of the hands of the craftsman, and in addition to, puts it up in secret, and all the people shall answer and say, Amen. So not only are you not supposed to make the image, but then people set it up in secret like he can't see it. So I tell you, just don't, it shouldn't even have been made in the first place. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 18. Of what use shall a carved image be? For its maker has carved it, a molded image, a teacher of falsehood. For the maker trusts what he has made to make dumb idols. So Yahweh says, cursed is the man who even makes a carved or molded image, which is an abomination to him, and then in addition to, decides to hide it. Now, the modern day definition of a graven image is a carved idol or representation of a god used as an object for worship. Notice that the definition says or, meaning that it can be a carved object like a doll, or someone could worship it too. So it is a doll or a carved image to begin with. So that right there classifies as an idol all by itself. It's a twofold definition, or. Now, another argument I've heard is, well, what about the mercy seat? What about the mercy seat? Exodus chapter 25, verse 18 through 22. And you shall make two cherubim, or cherubim in Hebrew, which are the angels, okay, of gold. Make them of beaten work at the two ends of the lid of atonement, and make a cherubim at one end and the other cherubim at the other end. Make the cherubim from the lid of atonement as its two ends. And the cherubim shall be spreading out their wings above, covering the lid of atonement with their wings, with their faces toward each other. The faces of the cherubim toward the lid of atonement, and you shall put the lid of atonement on the top of the ark, and put into the ark of the witness which I give you, and I shall meet with you there. And from the lid of atonement, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark of the witness, I shall speak to you all that which I command you concerning the children of Israel. So Moses was commanded to make cherubim, okay, an image in heaven on the mercy seat that sits above the ark of the covenant, and the esteem or the glory of Yahweh resides in the middle of the two angels. So you have the two cherubim right here, and Yahweh dwells within the middle, is where he said he would speak. He would speak to him there, right? So the Ark of the Covenant was behind the second veil, the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest, the Kohen Hagadol, will enter in once a year on Yom Kippur by himself to make atonement for himself, his family, and the assembly of Israel. So the high priest was the only one in the entire community of Israel who would have seen the images of the cherubim, because no one else was permitted to enter into the Holy of Holies lest they would die. Okay? He was the only one permitted once a year. Once a year. And Yahweh was bringing heaven down to earth. Okay? The mercy seat represents the throne of Yahweh, judging with his mercy and kindness, because he is in the middle and the two cherubim are covering him. One from the left, one on the right, and he is in the middle. Okay? So look at this. Satan, before being cast out, was a covering cherub in heaven. It was a high position. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 14. You were the anointed cherub that covered. You were the anointed cherub that covered. And I placed you. You were on the holy mountain, the Kodesh mountain of Elohim. You walked up and down in the midst of the stone of fire. You were perfect in all your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. Okay, so like I said, it's a representation of the Shamayim, the heavens. He was bringing heaven down to earth so that the children of Israel can make atonement. And furthermore, only the high priest, the Kohen HaGadol, would be the only one to enter in, because anybody else would die. And there was certain purification process that the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, would have to do to even enter into his presence. Okay, so not anybody could just go in, or they would die, because you were in the presence of Yahweh. Okay, so like I said, he was bringing heaven down to earth. Okay, now look at this. This shows, like I said, it's further evidence that he's bringing heaven to earth. And even in our prayers, okay, our prayers, we say, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, so this shows that what is on earth is a shadow of what is in heaven. Further proof of this, Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1 through 2. Now the summary of what we are saying is, we have such a Kohen HaGadol, a high priest, who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves in the Mikdash, the temple, and of the true tent, which Yahweh put up and not man. Verse 4 through 5. For indeed, if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the Torah. Now listen to this. Who serve a copy and a shadow of the heavens. As Moses was warned when he was about to make the tent, for he said, see that you make all according to the pattern shown to you on the mountain. So the temple, the earthly temple that they served in, was a shadow and a copy of the one that is in heaven. Okay. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 23. It was necessary then that the copies of the ones of the heavens should be cleansed with these, but one of the heavens themselves with better slaughter offerings than these. So we see that the earthly priest served in a copy and a shadow of the one that is in heaven, where Yeshua serves as our high priest. Moses didn't have to come up with the design, because Yahweh showed him the one that is in heaven, a copy and a shadow, just as he did with the mercy seat. Revelation chapter 11, verse 19. And the Mishkan, the tabernacle of Elohim, was opened in the heavens, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. Revelation 14:17, and another messenger or angel came out of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which is in the heavens. And he too held a sharp sickle. Revelation 15:5, And after I looked and saw the temple of the tent of the witness in the heavens was open. So, like I said, that's further proof that what we have, the mercy seat and the temple are all a shadow of what is in the Shamayim. That's what it says, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So Yahweh was bringing a piece of the heavens down to earth so that they can make atonement for themselves. But like I said, the high priest was the only one who saw it once a year. The rest of the community of Israel did not see the cherubim. Now, what about the serpent? That's the other argument that I've heard. Numbers chapter 21, verse 5 through 9. And the people spoke to Elohim against Moses. And the people spoke against Elohim and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Mitzrayim, Egypt, to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and our being loathes this light bread. And Yahweh sent fiery serpents among them, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Then the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahweh and against you. Pray to Yahweh to take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed on the behalf of the people, and Yahweh said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and put it on a pole, and it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. And we know that Yeshua said in John chapter 3, verse 14 through 15, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Man, the bane of Adam, has to be lifted up, so that whoever is believing in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. So, in review, the children of Israel sinned against Yeshua in the wilderness, who was the angel of Yahweh who was sent before them. And we know this when we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 9. Paul says, neither let us try Hamashiach, the Messiah, as some of them also tried and were destroyed by serpents. So he sent serpents amongst them for their sins and killed many of them, because the wages of sin is death. And we know that sin and death came into the world through the serpent. And even though the serpent represents death and sin, once it was lifted up, they looked upon it and it brought life. And by it being lifted up, it conquered death. The serpent was a reminder of their sin and rebellion, yet through mercy they were saved after the serpent was lifted up. The parallel is when we look upon Yeshua to save us from death, as he was lifted up on the execution stake to forgive us of our sins when we are worthy of death. So the serpent being lifted up represented death but brought forth life, was a foreshadowing of Yeshua being lifted up on the stake to save us from death so that we can have everlasting life. The foreshadow reminds me of Yeshua, the one speaking to Abraham, telling him not to sacrifice his son. Yet Yeshua came as the Son of Yahweh to sacrifice himself for all. He prevented Abraham from doing what he was coming to do himself. That is true love. So it was just a parallel and a foreshadow. And furthermore, the serpent was at the command of Yahweh. It was at the command of Yahweh. Moses didn't just go build a serpent and put it up for the people. Yahweh told them to do it. There was a reason for it, and we discovered out why that was. It's a foreshadow of death bringing forth life. Hallelujah. Now, John chapter 12, verse 31 through 32. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world, Satan, shall be cast out, and if I am lifted up from the earth, shall draw all unto myself. Now, dolls, graven images, action figures, we have to remember that Yeshua says that the way to the Shamayim, the heavens, is hard pressed and narrow. So ask yourself this. Majority of the world finds it acceptable to have dolls, teddy bears, toys, statues, busts, action figures in their homes, right? Yes. So, isn't that the broad path similar to rejecting the Sabbath day for the first day of the week? SUNDAY. 99% of the world goes to church on that day. So, that is a lot of people. That makes it broad. But the narrow path are those who stand with Yahweh's commandment of the fourth commandment, keeping the Sabbath day. So the same thing applies with these. We have been deceived, and we think that it's innocent enough to think that having a Barbie doll, giving it to your child as a toy to play with, or a teddy bear, or any of these things, or as even as a collectible for adults, we think that is innocent, but it's the broad path because 99.9% of the world have them in their homes. And maybe they just don't know or didn't understand what he was saying in Deuteronomy. But I pray that some eyes are being opened today over it. He says anything that's in the likeness of any figure, we can't change that. The likeness of any figure in the heavens, on the earth, or in the water, period. And I know some people say, well, a teddy bear? Come on, a teddy bear? Well, didn't Yahweh make a bear? He made bears. He said anything that's on the earth, any beast, in the likeness of any beast, a teddy bear. So you have polar bears, you have grizzly bears, it all ties in. It's something that he has created, a living life form that you cannot create in the likeness of. Okay, it's a graven image or a carved image. And I strongly believe that bringing these objects into your home carries unseen spiritual forces that open up portals in your home for unclean spirits. The same way as I've discussed in a previous broadcast last summer about the music industry, that they take a master copy and they place it on an altar and summon a demon to go wherever it goes. And the guy said this himself. He said that the most easily deceived people on this earth are the Christians because they don't know their own word. And, you know, Yahweh says in Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, that my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So we have to read his word and understand his word and not give Satan the legal right to enter into your homes. Okay, so if they summon a demon to go with your music and you know you have to play it in reverse to hear that hidden message that's in there, okay, even if you bought that album and it's sitting on in your house, the demon is still there. Okay, so you have given him legal right to enter into your home. The same way if you're bringing this accursed idol into your home, as Yahweh says, and the likeness of anything he has created. Even more telling is the fact that the origin of dolls started with witchcraft, voodoo, and magic arts. Just think of the word voodoo, what? Doll. Dolls were also used in pagan religious ceremonies. So the question is, why would any set apart believer want to do the same things as a pagan or a voodoo person is doing? We have to come out, my fellow brothers and sisters, and be separate from the rest of the world. The word holy literally means set apart. Leviticus 19 verse 2, Yahweh says, be holy, for I am holy. So you must stand out amongst the crowd and be separate, just as us wearing tassels, fringes, and tzitzit on our garments to remind us of the commandments and being separated and looking different from the world. The same thing applies here. People can come to your home and say, how come you don't have any statues in your house? And then you point them to Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 4. I pray that this has been a blessing to you and that some eyes have been open. And as always, pray to our Father Yahweh if you're struggling with this. Pray to him and take you to him in prayer and through his son Yeshua. And please share this video with everybody who needs to hear it because it's important, because they may not know. Please share this video with everyone, as the word must be spread, and we must keep his commandments. And again, thank you all for joining in, and thank you for watching. And may our Father Yahweh bless you in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.